All right, guys, the old dairy barn tour. A lot of people have talked about this, so it's a rain day. Let's do it. So you get your receiver there, from the milk system. And the bulk tank. The bulk tank I wouldn't mind turning into a fuel tank because it's a double wall tank, so it'd be compliant for fuel. You just have to do some welding on top because of that lid, or build a little shelter over it, whatever. But yeah, so there's where the vacuum system pulled, when the milk comes in the receiver jar and then gets pumped in the bulk tank and the wash stations and stuff. We sold the cows in 2003, and I bet I haven't been back in this milk house a half a dozen times. Then the air conditioning, the reverse air conditioning system for the bulk tanks over there. I wouldn't mind knocking this little milk house off. There's the wall of the barn. I wouldn't mind knocking this off to open up the drive for me coming around with equipment here. It'd sure open this up a lot. So here's the milk house. Then we come into the main barn. I store my sleds here now, but kind of turned into a little bit of storage junk, but not too bad. Everything you're seeing on the ground, that big fan was up in the ceiling, and then all this wood with the holes in it was bolted to the ceiling right there. You can see the dust strip. That was bolted there. That was for airflow above the cows. Get the humidity and stickiness out of the barn on them hot days. And then we had some fans some big box fans that swung down from the ceiling to move air, and then we had a couple that sat on the floor, and that just swept the air out. But it was a 60 stall, so off the room there we had a feed room with our lime and soy meal and salts and minerals and that kind of stuff. I've turned that into my parts room for right now. This little silo room, so they used to, before I come along, we had two little silos out there, and with no unloaders, so you back at the turn of the century of the 1900 century, when them silos were put up in the early, the 20s and 30s, you just shoveled out of them. That's what you did. But so by the time I come along, I only remember filling the one silo like one time in my life, and then after that we had the staves and the harvester to use. But we had 60 stalls in this barn here for milking. You had your normal gutter set up. In the 70s, this was a pretty state-of-the-art barn, so to speak. We used to have the Pats system that had some more exhaust fans on the walls where some of the windows were, just to help cool out as well. But we had the Pat system where it came through the hay barn and out to the feed lot right out here. And you can see where that bunk is a channel in the concrete. So it had the feed bunk for the cows, and it had that little conveyor that moved back and forth to spread that feed that whole length of that bunk. So you'd turn the milk cows out. They'd go out to the feed lot. Then they had some pasture there. And then you just turn on that feed bunk, and that was your haylage and silage. And here's the trap door for the hayloft, and we had several ladders along the wall to get to the hayloft as well. Then we come back here. There's your big door for in and out of the barn, and here's the dry cow. We had some maternity pens that we also double dutied as calf pens. We had a headlock, just a little head gate for some vet work in case you had to pull a calf or just do some work to the cows. The steers out in this lot, they got us rub against everything. They broke that wall right out. But the manure come back into the pit and pump back here. There's another vent fan. That fan was for the pit because but even back then, they knew about the methane gas coming off manure, so Dad and Grandpa made sure to have proper ventilation back there. But yeah, so this this is a really nice setup we had. Yep, you were milking in stanchions. And the stanchions, you know, went right along here. Right along this curb is where the stanchions were. We fed in this curb. We had plastic down there for feed quality because, you know, everything about dairy is quality feed. Then at some, yeah, so we had the conveyor. Let's see, this conveyor system. So you'd come out of the harvester into the conveyor and come up here and out of the staves. Well, then it would come up and shoot across the hay barn to go out to the feedlot, or for feeding in the barn, then you open this trap door and there was a slide on that conveyor that you could open, and then the feed would drop down. So then we could feed in the barn as well. And so you always ran the harvester on the 1-speed, and then you just kind of adjusted the winch on the stave to give you your mixture that you wanted. And then we had a roller mill. So the crop store I use for dry grain now was originally for high moisture corn. And so it came out, you can see the unloader there. It come out, it dropped into a vertical, and then it came across to this auger tube here, and then it come out the hole, and then we had a roller mill set up here. So it came down into the roller mill, and then the roller mill had a little fancy auger on it that brought it back up into a cart. And so then you had the cart, and you walked around the barn, and each cow got their own ration, and Dad and Grandpa had a little tag above each cow with 1 needle for corn and 1 needle for protein. So they'd get, 4 scoops of corn and 2 cups of protein, and for depending on where they're at in their gestation and milking cycle and all that, and how they're doing for production. And so they just wheel it around the yard, and then the steers out at the feed lot, the building isn't there anymore. We'd come back here, and same thing. You'd come in here, you'd fill up your cart. We had one of them little carts, and with the big wheels on it, and we'd pull it either through the barn, or you'd go around the barn and take it out to the young stock. Then right off behind the barn here, where I turn around, that was the dry cow and heifer pasture. And so yeah, it was, it was a hopping building at one time, and now it's very sad to have it empty. I'm glad the way the dairy market is. We left in 2003 on $9 milk, and we we wanted kids, but we never had kids. And sometimes I think we got lucky that we didn't have kids, because losing at that time, we probably would have been dang near homeless, or we just filed bankruptcy and walked away. But we didn't. We paid them all off, honestly. But yeah, so now it's gut this thing out. These Grandpa and them guys, Grandpa and Dad and uncles and cousins, the older cousins, when they built the barn, these are all rough sawn elm. Oh, these are a gorgeous board, and this is all 1/2 inch thick tongue and groove. The tongue and groove or lap joint pine that they made themselves. So we'll have to save all that wood, just because you can't ever throw nothing away, because you might need it someday. But we'll stockpile that wood somewhere. I got the rafters up in the hay mound to hold the hip roof together on the walls. So you can see the rafters up there. So I'll hold the hayloft together so we can pull this floor out this winter, and then we'll have a nice high, big open storage building cold storage, and who knows, maybe someday re-tin the building to seal it back up. And I guess I wouldn't mind on the end there to put my machine shop down at the end. I don't know. That'd be kind of fun. But so this winter, I'd like to cut him on the outside of the window, up a couple boards over that opening and down on that side of the window. Then once he's all gutted out and stuff, then these two tanks can go inside, and it becomes a nice storage building. But yeah. So try and make use out of it. It's too much of the farm to just simply knock down. So we'll figure out how to use it. But yeah, you know, there's the old dairy barn tour. And so guys, I will leave you on that. Thank you very much for watching, and please ask other questions.